Good evening, everybody. Hope your day's gone well. Hope you're not living in the fog. Tonight's class is relationship with friends. Before we start, could we please pray? Dear Lord, we come to you and we thank you for this day of life, certainly this season of the year, and temperatures and just the weather are different, but it's good to be alive, to be able to notice such things and experience such things. Please make us sensitive to the needs of this world. Help us to minister to people you've created as well as people for whom Jesus died. May we be sensitive to their needs. Please be present in their lives and use us in whatever ways possible to help them out. Thank you for your word, for your church. Help us to embrace the mission that you've entrusted to us. Thank you for our family and thank you for friends. They're great gifts to us. Help us to be good friends to others. So be with us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Jesus, in the 15th chapter of the Gospel of John, said this, and this is kind of the night before he was betrayed, before his crucifixion, and he's talking to his closest followers. And again, he's trying to share with them what the kingdom of God is all about. And it's different than many times what other people interpret it as being. Jesus makes it very personal. It's about human beings. It's about people. And so he says this to them. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appoint you to go and bear fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another. When Jesus is talking about friendship, when he's talking about insight into that, from what he describes, what he demonstrates in his life and his ministry, it's a love that is willing to sacrifice. Jesus sacrifices for us, and we are to lovingly sacrifice for others. It's what we offer people. It's to be reciprocated. It's what also people are to offer us. And in that is the basis for friendship. Using that definition or criteria, we begin to understand it becomes our experience that friendship may not be a common thing. In fact, it may be very rare. In our society, our identity, our self-image is often tied to how many friends we have. Our self-worth seems to depend upon how popular we are. We're familiar with Facebook. And what is the criteria that's used in Facebook? It seems to reinforce this concept or belief that we are to have friends. We request people to friend us. We can delete friends. Ultimately, there is an indicator as to how many friends we have. And sometimes you check with people and they have hundreds of people listed as their friends. Sometimes it's in the thousands. And that is really rather remarkable, to say we have that many friends. It isn't something that is new. As children, maybe we have birthday parties. So our parents ask us, well, which one of what friends do you want to invite? And, we think of our class or maybe neighbors or something like that, and we make this list as the people we want to include. We fear the contrast of thinking that we don't have anyone to play with, that we don't have friends. There's times maybe we go through our list and nobody wants to do anything with us, and we feel alone in that. And we really see that as being a negative. I don't know if they do this anymore, but my age, when we got our high school yearbooks, every year you would go around and they would have like a day where people would sign in your yearbook. If you went to a teacher, maybe they would say something like, best wishes always, and they sign their name. You would have other people who would write other things. Sometimes we look back at our yearbooks and we go, oh my gosh, I can't believe they wrote that. You may have other people who, again, want to express something as to how you make them feel, or what their interaction or experience with you has been. And we did the same thing for them. So we have that thing. There are cliques. There's always cliques. I mean, it's a group of people that they hang with each other, but it's very difficult, and they literally many times ostracize other people. They won't let other people in. And that doesn't change. A little over a year ago, I had my 50th class reunion removed by a couple of years because of COVID. And you go there, 70 years old, and the same cliques still existed. It was the same people getting together 50 years later. Now, I don't begrudge them that. I mean, if they were friends in high school, okay, you have an opportunity to see each other once again, and you maybe relive some of your experiences, etc. But to think that after all of those years, they still didn't see the need, or they didn't have the desire to want to branch out beyond their group, to talk to somebody else and say, oh, hey, how you doing? How's life been? And those cliques always exist. I would imagine that people who are in the military, it's people maybe that they went through basic training with, and they kind of hang together, when they have leave or whatever, okay, they're together. It exists in corporate America. People who work in offices, there are certain people who, you just can't kind of break into that group. Friends become important as far as really any type of party. Graduation parties, wedding invitations go out. Well, who's going to be included? And sometimes, you have weddings that are relatively large. You may have a couple hundred people there. And you kind of understand that, okay, extended family. But then you think, well, all these other people? Really? Are you that close with them? Is that the reality of your life? How can that many people be that important in your life? Where does the cutoff come? It's not even something that is exempt as far as the church is concerned. We have gatherings, baptisms, confirmations. Who's going to be included? When it gets to the end of life, funerals. Who comes to the funeral? I've been at funerals. My dad's funeral. They were literally lined up within the funeral home, out the door, down the block and down another block. But my dad had lived in that area his whole life. He was in advertising for a newspaper. He knew a lot of people. And I mean, I appreciate the fact that they took the time to come and express something. But then again, I've also been at funerals, and I've done a lot of funerals in my life, in the hundreds, probably more than 400 funerals over my career. I've also been at funerals where there aren't enough people there to carry the casket. That I've had to help out the funeral directors in terms of putting the casket in the hearse and taking the casket to the grave. How we perceive life as to, again, friendship, relationships. Let me offer a different perspective. We have many acquaintances. Over my life, I have literally encountered thousands of people. Thousands. My first call was in a very large congregation of about 3,800 members. In my travels, this, that, and the other. So thousands of people. But they're acquaintances. They're not friends. You know who they are. Maybe they know who you are. But it's based upon what have you shared? And to think of life in that way and kind of to reserve that title of friend or description as friend, to save that for people who truly are special in our lives. I say I've had thousands of acquaintances. I think we will be lucky in life, blessed in life, if in our whole life we have one or two friends. Now that kind of sounds depressing, but no, to have one or two friends, people who fit that criteria of lovingly sacrificing for us as well as our willingness to sacrifice for them. Now those friendships, once again, they may last for a certain chapter of life or period of life, or they may be lifelong. People that, again, we've just traveled and made the journey with, and they've been with us virtually every step of the way. Friendship has to do with sharing and trust. And I'm going to do something. This is something that exists within business and corporate America. It's called the Johari window. And it's used as far as relationships and communication. Alter it a little bit in terms of our purposes, but if you take a window with 4 parts, and when we look at relationships and we look at ourselves, etc., general information that exists about us. You can go online and find out certain information about people. You can find out their address. You can find out their phone number, those types of things. Again, just general information that virtually anybody can come up with. Then there are other relationships. Specific info or stories. And these are people who maybe have known us at a different level. Maybe aunts and uncles or something like that, or cousins. These are the type of people who could come and say, remember when you did this? Or you remember that time we were together? Do you remember that family event? Whatever it is, it could also be people maybe that we went to school with, but they have a little bit deeper or broader collection of information about us. Then there's other people. There's things about us that in our entire life, maybe only one or two people know. It's a very, very small group. And lastly, there's things about us no one will ever know. Things about us, things that we've done, experiences we've had, reactions, feelings, etc., that we will never, ever share with another human being. Realizing this, it once again plays into who we consider a friend. It's a very small group of people, a very small window. The reality of this, I have no contact with anyone that I went to school with in my hometown. There were people that I went to school with from kindergarten through high school. There are people that I, spent a lot of hours with in terms of playing sports, etc. I have no contact with anyone. The 50-year reunion, the people that I tried to talk to different people. Some people, again, started out in kindergarten with them and tried to ask them in terms of how life has gone, etc. It's pretty hard to fill in 50 years in brief periods of time. The people I probably shared the most with was people that I was in sports with. That was just kind of a common experience and that type of thing. But I have no contact with them, week in, week out, year after year, etc. I have no contact with anyone that I went to college with. There's one guy, a couple of years ago, I was in Burr Ridge, was going to go to an Asian restaurant, but parked in front of another restaurant, and decided to go in there because I hadn't been there for a long time. Sitting at a booth, and these people come in at a round table, and there's a guy there. He looked like he could be the brother of my supervising pastor on internship in Stone Mountain, Georgia, Rock of Ages Lutheran Church. They were so similar, I could not stop looking at him. And it's like I just wonder, how could he look so much like this guy? And well, then a younger couple came in. And I look, and the guy, I'm going, Dan? And finally, I had to get out of the booth, and I went over and I said, excuse me for interrupting, but I said, you look an awful lot like a guy that I went to college with. And he says, yeah, he says, you look a lot like a guy I went to college with too. We were on the same floor. We played intramural sports. We were in the same team, etc. I had not seen Dan in 40 years. And ultimately, we kind of exchanged phone numbers, etc. And we've gone out for dinner a few times. But that's the only person I have any contact with from college. Another 4 years, seminary. I virtually have no contact with any classmates from seminary. There's a few that we exchange Christmas cards, and then the Christmas cards we kind of say what went on the previous year. You know, we're all 71 now. We're getting to the point where there won't be that many more years of Christmas cards. That's a huge chunk of life. And people, again, that I shared life with, but there is no continuing sharing. The congregations I have served started in Minnesota, Grace Lutheran Church. There are some people that I keep in contact there. Past few years, I've gone up there once a year, and I'll visit people, and maybe we'll go out for dinner or something like that. But not much communication throughout the year. There's one person who she was in my first confirmation class. You know, she's in her 50s now, and we text pretty regularly. Other congregations I've served, there are isolated individuals or households that I will have contact with. But you think again of all those people. And as far as friendship is concerned, again, that's narrowed down quite a bit. And that's amazing because you think, again, as pastors, we have the privilege of being involved in some of the most significant events in people's lives. The birth of their children, baptisms, confirmations, weddings, sicknesses, crisis that they go through, counseling, funerals. And you think, well, that depth of sharing, and yet it doesn't seem to translate into any type of constant relationship. It's not that they, I don't think, don't appreciate us or anything like that. It's just that it doesn't happen. I live in an apartment. I've lived there for 25 years. I could probably count, certainly on two hands, the times that somebody has stopped to visit me. People just don't take the initiative. And some of that's cultural. Things have changed. You know, when I was a kid, it wasn't unusual. We'd be having dinner, and my dad would say, to my mom, Marge, why don't you call so-and-so and see if they're going to be home tonight? We'll drop by for a few hours and visit. That virtually does not happen anymore. We're at a different place. What do we do for communication? How do we primarily communicate? Our phone. Isn't it interesting? We text people. Maybe we email people. It's a phone. It was meant for talking. I think that's what Alexander Graham Bell had in mind. Pick it up and hear the other person's voice. We don't do that. You can have people, and sometimes people make jokes about this, you can have people who are sitting right next to each other. They don't talk to each other, they're texting each other. I'm not making a judgment on that, it's just an observation. And how that affects us relationally, and how it affects the potential for friendships. Some things, again, just don't exist. Friendship. There's two sides to it. There's us, there's the other person, etc. This genuine love and caring, how is it demonstrated? How is it lived out? What are some of the characteristics of it? As in any relationship, one of the biggest factors is time. To spend time with people. We're busy people. We have our schedules full, whatever it is, or there's times basically we just want to zone out. We don't really want to interact with people. As a result of that, we don't really spend time. You can have families and they don't spend time with each other and they're in the same house. We have multiple TVs. We have larger spaces. I think I've said before, in the house I grew up in was so small, you couldn't get away from people. You just ran into each other all the time. You had one bathroom. You had to communicate. Kitchens weren't big. Nothing was big. But today, people have the space to be able to avoid each other. Whether we're willing to commit time. Sometimes you have in relationships, and it exists still today. I can go places. Let's say it's some type of gathering, extended family or whatever, and sometimes you can just see people, their body language, whatever it is, they get about an hour and a half into the event, and they're looking for it to be over. They're already giving indications that they want people to leave. You can talk with people sometimes, and they won't give you their undivided attention. Sometimes you go to large meetings, synod assemblies or whatever, and you're talking to somebody, and you see the person constantly looking for other people. Almost like, well, if I get the opportunity, I want to go talk to that person. Instead of focusing on you, looking at you. Again, it's the way it is. Energy. How much are we willing to put into a relationship? And there again, that's initiative. Whether it's coming from another person or what is it that we want to do. So how much time and energy do we want to devote to someone? Communication. I've said to people in counseling situations, premarital counseling, the most difficult thing we will ever do in our life, our entire life, is communication. It's hard. As a human being, I have enough trouble getting through a day trying to figure out what I think or what I feel. And that varies through the course of a day. So if I'm trying to figure out what I'm thinking or feeling or how I'm reacting to life, and then you say, okay, let's put another person in, even if it's a spouse, well, they're doing the same thing. They're trying to figure out life, but now you have two people who are trying to think of what it is that's going on in their head or what it is that's going on, within them as far as feelings, etc. They're trying to figure it out, but at the same time, they're expected to communicate with the other person. That's tough. And that is an everyday process. And so you take that and then you take, throw in elements like, generational differences, reacting to things. And as human beings, we run things through our own experiences. Peyton and Lily, if we would talk to you about your day in school and we would be running it through our own experiences, whole different world. We would have trouble understanding what your everyday life is. And likewise, you would have trouble understanding our everyday life and what our experiences were. You can try to explain things, but again, that takes a lot of work and effort. So we have that element as well in terms of talking about relationships, talking about friendships. Trust. Gets back to this. Who can we really trust? It's hard to be vulnerable. things that have happened to us or how we've reacted to things, etc., to share that with another person. That is really tough, because one of the worst things in life is to be betrayed. For somebody to take what is intensely personal to you and that you struggle with, etc., or you've experienced some great hurt, etc., and share that, and for that person then to ignore that confidentiality and go out and share it with others. That is devastating. Now, as professionals, again, we are bound by confidentiality. That if people come to talk with us and they say, I want this to be confidential. I don't want you to share this with anybody. We don't share it with anybody. Even if we were subpoenaed, whatever it was, by the courts, nobody can make us say what people have shared with us. You tell nobody. In my ministry, there were times that people thought, well, okay, they would share something with me, and then maybe we'd be in a social situation, and maybe they would ask my spouse, almost kind of leading questions as though, or making statements as though she knew what they had said to me. And of course, then they'd see the blank look on her face, and they realized that I didn't tell her. Now, in some respects, that's a burden. You carry the pains and the hurts of a lot of people. And maybe there are instances where you really weren't able to help. But you cannot betray that ever, 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 ever. If you do it once, word will get out and no one will ever trust you. That's how important it is. So that exists within friendships as well. People. Like I said, we will encounter a lot of people. If some of those people happen to become friends, which hopefully that happens in our life, those relationships need to be healthy, positive, to do us good, rather than the contrast or the opposite of being unhealthy, negative, and to do us harm. And that's why we always have to be careful as to who we kind of hang with and who we consider to be a friend. The wrong friends can lead you down some dark paths. And we have to have a sense of integrity. We have to know who we are, what we believe in, and to not compromise that. There will be plenty of people who, in a sense, will try to manipulate us or buy us off or something like that in some way, shape, or form. Well, if you want to, hang out with me, then you've got to, kind of join in and do what we do. There's a lot of people in prison who did that. They bailed out on who they were. And maybe, again, they were confused. They didn't know. Well, that's the other side of the responsibility is, we have to find out who we are and what is important to us, and to not compromise regardless of what it is other people say they're going to do for us or offer us or whatever that is. And I've told my old children, and this is very, very, very hard. It is better to be alone than to be with the wrong people. It is better to be alone than to be with the wrong people. That may sound very negative, but in a sense, sometimes aloneness can help us, again, discover who we are. But also it's one of those things of, it's a world full of people. You will encounter different people. You look and say, oh my gosh, our high school experience, we can't imagine anything beyond that. Well, you know what? There is a beyond that. Whether you get out into the workplace or you go to the military or you go to college or something like that, or a trade school or whatever, you will encounter different people. You will live different places. You will have different neighbors. You may go to a different congregation or whatever, but there will be people who will interact with your life. And I think part of it is also trusting that God will cause people to interact with our lives, who will be healthy and helpful and, help us to do good, to support us in positive ways rather than those negative ways. And I think, as we mature, hopefully, again, we learn things about who we are and about what the world is like, and our antennas are kind of out there a little bit, and you start to sense whether a person is, good for you or not. Now I'm not denying the fact that there are people who are chameleons. They change. There are people who are excellent actors. They would be eligible for an Academy Award. There are people who put as much effort into deceiving people as we try to do in terms of being honest. You think of people who are classified as cons. I used to say to congregations, again, councils, those people work at what they do as much as you work at your job. They are experts at it. So, again, will there be times we get taken in? Sure there will be. And that doesn't mean we have to paint everybody with the same brush and become so suspicious of everybody. But you start to pick up on clues. People aren't aware of the fact that, in a congregation, any congregation, you have quite a number of people during the course of a year who will come and ask for assistance. Some of those requests are legitimate. There are others that they're just scamming. They can come and say, well, I don't have any food. I need food from the food pantry. They've already hit 5 other congregations. If you would go out and probably open the trunk of their car, it would be filled with groceries. You have no way of knowing. You can ask some questions, etc., but after a while you start to pick up on certain things. And one of the criteria I used was, the more somebody talks, the less I believe them. The more somebody talks, the less I believe them. Why? Because they're trying to convince you. They're trying to con you. My belief is, okay, if you're hungry and you come to the door and you ask a congregation and say, would you be able to help me out with some food? If you're truly hungry, you're looking for a yes or no answer. Because if the answer is no, I've got to get in my car, and I've got to go someplace else. But if I have the time to sit here and then change my story, well, my dog also needs dog food. And I've got my mother-in-law in the car, and she just came from the doctors. And the story just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because they're trying to play upon your emotions and that you give them something. And that's what I mean by the more they talk, the less I believe them. And I just say that as far as awarenesses of people. Sometimes friends have their limitations. We can get into things in life that are complicated. And we may go to our friends looking for assistance, support, whatever it is. Truthfully, they may not be able to help us. Dealing with confirmation classes over the years in youth groups. When we are younger, we can get into things that are just over our head. You need to go to someone who can truly help you. Somebody who is capable, somebody who's a professional, somebody maybe who is older, somebody who has life experiences. Because your friends oftentimes are in the same boat you're in. So they can't help you. Years ago in a congregation, had a young guy who sadly died by virtue of inhalants. That was tough. It was tough for everybody. Every young person in the congregation, his age, high school age, knew what he was doing, and nobody said anything. Could have stopped it maybe earlier, at least saved his life. What he was doing was incredibly dangerous, and there was a lot of, damage possible to as far as his body, as far as his brain was concerned. Nobody said anything. He died. In today's world, there's a lot of things that you don't get a second chance. You just don't get a second chance. We're aware of, maybe different drugs being cut with fentanyl, those types of things. There's other drugs again. It just takes one time. And that's it. Before I left high school, buried 5 classmates. You can't deny some of the realities of life or deny death. I was a pallbearer for 2. When you're carrying somebody's body who's the same age. They didn't get a chance. Now, they didn't die by virtue necessarily of, some cancer, others accidents, yes. And the thing about, kind of on that subject, one of the things too about life is the fact of, we know suicide is a huge problem in our society and culture. What I say to people is, I can understand the feelings, the desperation, or to think that there is no light at the end of the tunnel, and to think that that is the choice of life, to end life. But just by virtue of experience, we may have very intense feelings at times or thoughts, but you may not have those same thoughts or feelings 6 hours from now, 6 days from now, 6 months from now. And to take that definitive action and to not allow yourself to get past it and through it. Something we have to consider. And the same is true as far as, friends. That's why we need to get to people, to somebody who can truly help them. When I was my home church and our high school Christian education class on Sundays, there was a guy, Kent Pratt, tall, lanky guy. He had been in the Army. He'd been around the block. He knew what life was like, etc. And one of the greatest things he offered was he said one Sunday, he said, if you get into something in life that you don't think that you can go to your parents first to talk with them, call me. No matter where I am, I will come for you. And that was a tremendous gift, knowing that he was there and that he would do that. And that meant a lot. I've kind of shared the same thing with my kids, recognizing the fact of even though you have parent-child relationship, etc., life is something that sometimes, again, we just get into things and we don't know what to do with it, etc. And I told them the same thing. If you don't feel like you can talk with me or your mother, there are other people in your life that you know, people that you've shared life with, people who love you, people that you can trust. Go to them and ask for help. So that's what we kind of offer to people as far as friendship. The other thing is some of what I've said is kind of focusing on other people being our friends. But it's also applicable on the other side of what kind of friend are we to others? Do we have a sense of integrity? Are we concerned about, again, that loving sacrifice? Do we offer them a healthy relationship? Do we offer them something that's positive? Do we offer them something that is good, that will help them to grow and develop and mature as a human being? Are we a good friend? And that probably is one of the greatest qualities we could have as a human being. And for us to not simply say, well, okay, how are people treating me? Are they a good friend to me? But am I a good friend to them? Do I do the things that's necessary? Do I offer them my time? Do I offer them my energy? Do I work at communication? Am I somebody who can be trusted? Will I be honest with them? Am I a joy? Am I a joy in their life? Or am I an anchor? Because, that's important. That will translate, again, when people are looking for a life partner or a spouse. Those same characteristics are important. Sometimes you will hear people say, well, my spouse or my life partner, they're my best friend. And that's wonderful. Hopefully it's not your only friend. It may be, but we, again, need relationships. God offers relationships to us, and it's a great part of the kingdom of God. Can't be beat. And like I said, if we are blessed with one or two people that we can honestly say, that person is my friend, that's something. That's something.